Anytime you beg another man to set you free, you'll never be free. Freedom is something that you have to do for yourself.
Okay, so day 13 just wrapped up. They had Martti Malmi and Dr. Adam back get cross-examined today. So Martti Malmi was up first. He took control of Bitcoin.org in 2011. But at the very beginning, they asked him if he participated in any Bitcoin forums or crypto forums, and he said no, but almost the entirety of their line of questioning was around his activity on those forums. So it seemed like it threw him off. He seemed very nervous on the stand. I'm not sure if it was him being nervous or being very stoic. Um, he didn't seem super confident. I'll say that, just reading his body language. But they asked him about the timetable or the timeline for the server migration from bitcoin.sourceforge over to bitcoin.org over to Bitcoin Talk. And he said he couldn't recall the timeline for the server migration from the different websites. That seemed to be something that they spent a lot of time on. I mean, he seemed, if you are of the belief that Craig is Satoshi, then you would see him as someone who betrayed him, because essentially they talked about how when he moved everything from Bitcoin.org to Bitcoin Talk, that he didn't transfer the username for Satoshi over, so he didn't grant Satoshi access to the new website. And he said that he could have if it was requested from Satoshi, but because no request was received from Satoshi, he didn't do it. That was something that the judge asked him about at the end of his cross-examination. He also used the username Sirius. That was on a different forum, not the antistate.com forum. I think it was Sirius was his username, I believe, on the Bitcoin forums. So yeah, they questioned him quite a bit on removing Satoshi's access when the server migration happened. He did agree with Craig's lawyer when they said that Satoshi meant for the timestamp system in Bitcoin to be used to pretty much create a transparent system where people couldn't be anonymous. So I thought it was interesting that he agreed with him that that was the original purpose of Bitcoin. He denied any direct communication with Craig, saying that he didn't try to communicate with Craig at all. And yeah, it was just all in all sort of a weak witness for COPA. Generally, I don't think he did a good job on the stand. That was just my basic impression of how he did, was that he didn't do a great job. So Adam Back, on the other hand, he did a much better job on the stand. He's obviously a very smart man. He's the guy who invented Handcash, or Hashcash rather. So he was very confident. He had strong body language. The whole time he was kind of nodding confidently after his own responses, which I thought was kind of funny. Like he was agreeing with himself, or I don't know if it was doing a mental checklist in his head, going through making sure that he mentioned everything that he wanted to recite. That might be what it is, but I thought it was kind of funny. He had a bit of a head nod going a lot of the time after he spoke. I'm sure it's just a mannerism of his, but I've never really seen him speak a whole lot. I've seen him talk here or there, but I never noticed that mannerism before. It stood out today. It was something that I noticed quite a bit while he was on the stand anyway. So they questioned him about the differences between the Aurora paper and the Bitcoin paper, and the differences between Hashcash and Bitcoin, and specifically looking at how the target hash is looking for a hash with a specified number of zeros at the first part of the hash, and how under the header in the Bitcoin white paper, the number of zero bits are described, how that particular part of the hash is described in the Bitcoin white paper. And the interesting part of what he said is that he made the claim that Satoshi was wrong about this and that it was an oversimplification the way that it's described in the white paper. And he described it as an optimization that he thought of using but didn't. And what it's using is that it's using a floating point number, which is more specific to the leading 0 bits, which are used in Hashcash. And I'm not exactly sure why they focused in on this specific detail so much, but it's also something that when the core developers, when the developers lawyer had the opportunity to cross-examine him, they also talked about that. So it seems pertinent to the case for all parties, in the sense that everybody had some questions to ask him about that. But they asked him about his exchanges with Satoshi. They asked about his email correspondence with Satoshi, and he tried to make the case that he thought, based on some of his communications with Satoshi, that he wasn't aware of B-money. But Craig's lawyers insisted that in that particular communication, what he was denying was knowledge of a particular page talking about B-money and not B-money itself. He made a lot of speculation about what Satoshi's knowledge of certain topics was. And to me, I've noticed with a lot of the witnesses, they were unwilling to speak for someone else. They didn't want to speak about what someone else's intentions were or what they were thinking, whereas Adam Back did that quite a bit with Satoshi. He apparently knew what Satoshi was thinking and feeling. So a little bit arrogant, and he did it in subtle ways. He didn't come right out and say that. It was just implicit in the things that he had said. So I thought that was just, it came across as arrogant. Also, he is the CEO and founder of Blockstream. So there's this enormous conflict of interest. They asked him a bit about COPA's relationship with Blockstream, and a little bit of how there's this competition essentially between BSV and BTC, and how each side will benefit based on which side is seen as the real Bitcoin, which is ultimately what's going to happen at the end of this trial. Or potentially could be anyway, if there's certainty at the end of the trial anyway. At the end of the day, though, there were some interesting bits of housekeeping that they covered at the end of the day. So the dev lawyers were telling the judge that there were some late developments in what they were doing with the latex processing, and that they had a visualization that they wanted to share with the judge, I think on Friday, and that Craig will be back on Friday as well. And when he pointed that out, Craig's lawyer said that at the time that he views that visualization, there were key details that they wanted to bring to the judge's attention about this visualization as he viewed it. So Craig's team seems to be prepared to present their case alongside this demonstration. So it seems like there'll be something interesting to be discussed and debated on Friday. The visualization, he said, is just going to be a sequence of all the changes that have occurred in the metadata on the document, and the document changes itself overlaid pretty much against one another to show the changes over time. So it's just going to be showing like the original, one change, next change, next change. At least that's how it seemed like he was describing it. But yeah, tomorrow they're going to have Mike Hearn, and yeah, Craig will be back Friday. So I'm excited to see what tomorrow and Friday bring. Generally, I feel like not a whole lot came out today that was interesting, but it's just filling in everything now. Yeah, I mean, we're about 2.5 weeks in now, and a little less than a month to go. there's still a lot that's going to happen in this trial. So yeah, we'll see what happens. Like, share, and subscribe.